So I'm a child of this city. I grew up in this city during the height of the drug war. Grew up in East Oakland, where I live now. And I got to see both firsthand the horrors of what drugs did to the black community, and particularly in this city. But what added insult to injury was this United States government's response. Everything that the government did made the drug trade more profitable, more deadly, more vibrant, right? And it made it difficult for people to get off of drugs. We treated people who were drug users as they were criminals, and we treated people who were in the drug trade as throwaway, right? And so I searched for many years to find a way to do something about this. And I did a lot of different youth organizing, cultural work. My oldest daughter's here, Jael, my second oldest daughter, Taya, and my girlfriend, Laura, there. Jael still makes fun of the Underground Railroad. Because we was for her, it's sort of like this weird, like, dad and his friends, and mom and his friends sort of situation. But for us, it was a meditation on how to practice getting free. Right? Like, what is it, like, how could we sneak our way to freedoms late night under cover of darkness with the drums and the word and the song? How can we practice holding each other, right? In love and light in that space. So we called it the Underground Railroad, thinking we would slip. Right? And to her, it was just like mom and dad and their funny friends with patchouli oil and dread. So you're back. Okay. And so for many years, I worked to try to figure out how could I be a part of something that made a difference. And I came to the Ella Baker Center after working in city government for a short stint, and wanted to get back to organizing young people. And I knew our founder, Van Jones, and I said, I want to do youth organizing in Oakland. And he said, I got a grant to hire an organizer for our police accountability hotline. And if you come and take that job, you can do youth organizing on the side. And I took 2 jobs for less than the price of one, which was a horrible financial decision. But I never looked back, and I stayed because the Ella Baker Center was fundamentally committed to seeing young people, trans people, people of color, immigrants, as the solutions to the problems that our communities are facing, not as the problem. So the Ella Baker Center, 20 years ago, started a program called Transaction, dealing with issues of police misconduct against the transgender community, when even gay people would not talk about transgender people in the San Francisco Bay Area, like excluding folks from the Pride March. We're not going to talk about your issues. The Ella Baker Center took that on, and they said that this would be a solution to the problem of police misconduct, that hip-hop kids and trans folks could organize to stop the police from brutalizing us. When we couldn't go to churches to get support, and those folks wouldn't march with us, the Ella Baker Center said, I think you all might, there might be a partnership here, this unlikely alliance notion. And so I came to the Ella Baker Center all those years ago because I saw that it was about positioning young people to be the solutions and not the problems, about positioning immigrants to be the solution and not the problems, about positioning women to be the solution and not the problem, right? And so I stayed there for all those years and got to have some incredible organizing experiences. And, fighting to stop the construction of a super jail here, fighting to close youth prisons throughout the state of California, eventually moved into this like weird green jobs thing when our founder was like, I think we have to do something about the environment and poverty, and we could do something around green jobs. And I was like, I don't know polar bears, but I know that the asthma that's coming out of, the pollutants coming out of the port are giving my baby asthma, and we need to do something about it. And we started knocking on doors in West Oakland with that message, and we started organizing a green jobs movement here in Oakland. And we had some incredible successes, many failures as well along the way, right? But I had a moment of realizing, Steve said earlier, I saw him, what do I really believe? And being a child of Oakland, I have this, being a black child of Oakland, I have this particular odd inheritance of the Black Power movement, the Black Freedom movement, and Black spirituality that I understood through the songs that my elders were teaching me. This little light of mine, that I was like, what I believe fundamentally is that we're all based in spirit. But when you look at my body of work in the world, spirit doesn't show up in that. What shows up in that is like really good electoral organizing, figuring out how to frame and cut issues to marginalize my opponents, right? Like I am still fairly good at that. If you want to run for office, we should talk. But what I decided was that pursuing that as my main way of doing my work left a ton undone. And one of the big wake-up calls for me about doing that was I got to go into the Deep South. Ended up on this little road trip, Atlanta to Montgomery, Alabama, and then back. And got to stop in Albany, Georgia at, there is a church, no, it was a civil rights museum next door to a church. In the museum is like, it's a bus station waiting room, and it's like actual audio footage or audio recordings of organizers and video footage of the work they were doing and people's testimonials about the work. And you walk through and you see the like segregated waiting rooms, and you see like, you know, photos of people getting beat, and you hear stories of people like when they set the bus on fire, or people like, you get all this sort of sense, and it's like profoundly overwhelming. And then next door, on the second Saturday of every month, the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, the kids who led the sit-ins in the Deep South, they organized a group of freedom singers to go around singing about the movement and raising money to fund the movement. And those people still sing that second Saturday of every month. And guess what? It was the second Saturday of the month, y'all. Yeah, Spirit was alive and well that day. So I go into the church with my friend who's also a civil rights, human rights defender, an attorney from the Deep South. This woman, Kung Lee, fabulous attorney, who's my tour guide, because she's from the South, so she's taking me around. So we go in and we sit in the church, and I'm excited. And the SNCC Freedom Singers start singing freedom songs, and the Spirit is alive, right? And then they start talking about what songs they were singing at what part of the struggle, and they introduce this song and that. Then they start introducing themselves, and it's like just immaculate. It's like the third generation of them. It's like youngest one who's right, and the oldest one who's there that day is the auntie or the niece of one of the women who started it. And there's a picture in the back of the pulpit of the Reverend Dr. King preaching in that pulpit. Like, it's all right there. And I'm like, alive. I'm like, yes, right? And as they start introducing themselves, I'm a teacher, but I retired because, man, these children, boy, I tell you. And I'm like, let's get back to the singing. And then the next one says, yes, you know, and I've been a teacher, and, you know, these little badass kids and whoop-de-woo, and that's why my son's a prison guard, because he's going to straighten these children out. And I'm like, really, let's get back to the singing. And then they say, but you know, our youngest member, she's gonna figure it out. She just moved here from Florida, and she is an assistant district attorney, and she's gonna straighten these children out. And I was like, I'm in a black church with black people who are freedom singers talking about that black children are the problem. And it's because they don't know their history, but the criminal justice system is going to sort them out. So we actually excused, I got to be a point where it was like, I can't listen to this more. We gotta just get up in the middle of, like, hey, I'm from Oakland, I gotta take a flight, we gotta go, good to rapid, bye. And we got in the car and we're driving back to Atlanta, and I'm basically in tears, telling Kung Lee, I don't, like, what the hell have I spent my life doing if black people want to lock up black babies as a solution to our community's problems, when we had these problems before these black babies ever showed up? I know that Oakland was violent before I was born, it was violent before my children were born, but somehow my children are the problem? I don't understand. And what I realized was the work that I was doing on the policy arena, hell of important, super fundamentally important. We have to change systems and structures. No way about it. And that people also have an internal life. People tell stories to make sense of things. And the stories we tell ourselves are of profound importance. Someone says a sick society tells 6 stories. We tell profoundly 6 stories in the United States. One of the profound tragedies is we have the biggest microphone in the entire world. So we telling 6 stories. I was in Paris last December, turned on the radio, top 40, 90% of the songs are U.S. stories, U.S. songs. I was in Toronto 2 weeks ago, turned it on, same thing. Now there's some beauty in that because they're getting some beautiful black culture and a little bit of formation at this moment. But by and large, it's not good. We're telling ourselves profoundly sick stories. And so what I decided to do after really consulting with some of my mentors and elders was to step back into understanding that the Dr. Martin Luther King was actually the Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King. That Malcolm X, who I love so much because I'm a radical, as you might can tell, fist up, you got me, okay? Malcolm was Minister Malcolm. That there was something that they were up to in the way they did their work, which just wasn't just like, that was like a random ass job title. That they were living out the way they understood reality and what their spirituality was calling them to do profoundly and deeply. And that somewhere along the way, these things had gotten disentangled. That it wasn't black Christianity or even black Islam that anchored black people in those freedom songs or in those spirituals when we was picking cotton and carrying on. It was a profoundly deep black spirituality that had nothing to do with those things. And that thing had been lost, and we didn't have access to it. Or we had limited access to it. It's like spotty internet connection, which sometimes is worse than no internet connection. So what I decided to do was to study and try to see if I could excavate or be a part of excavating these traditions so that we can use them, which took me to Pacific School of Religion and a fellowship there, studying the intersection of spirituality and social change, and then recruited me to lead the Ignite Institute, which tries to excavate and share these. And I want to share just a few of them with you before I leave, because I think they're profoundly important. So for me, I anchor this in an African traditional sense. There's this West African visual symbol language called the Adinkras. And one of the Adinkra symbols is a Sankofa. Who's heard of the word Sankofa? A lot of people name stuff Sankofa because that's good. So Sankofa, the symbol, there's two of them. One is like a curly Q heart that's really pretty. I'm going to get that one tattooed. The other one explains itself, or it's a bird with an egg in its beak taking a step forward while looking back. And the entire notion is about that we should not be ashamed to go back and reclaim what we've forgotten. Now, there are between 8,000 and 10,000 years of recorded human history of people doing this spiritual thing. Of people getting together to say, you know what, we get our mind, we get all in our heads and out of our bodies. And so whether it's yoga or prayer or African tradition, indigenous tradition, Asian traditions, there are profound lineages of people coming together to figure this thing out. Well, we should not reinvent the wheel is what I came to. That we should go back. I mean, like everything everything that was old is not worth updating. Like when you move, you don't take everything with you. You get some new stuff, but then your favorite chair, you should keep that. Or your grandmama's table, you might should hold on to that. Well, in the United States, we are obsessed with the not hottest, newest, next, new, innovative, everything can't be innovative. It's still a phone, damn it. So how do we go back and bring forward the things that we need, right? So we can update those things, we might do it differently, but then we should go back and get some of these things, right? Like, yeah, there's too much to do, I don't have enough time. So in that process, I begin to excavate traditions that I didn't want nothing to do with. So being in my younger years, being a black nationalist in many ways, an internationalist at the end of the day, but fundamentally concerned with black people. I was cool off the Bible and Christianity. I didn't have nothing for it. Because I was like, man, y'all, we was free. You took us and then gave us a book? It's a book. No, I'm not with it, right? And as I dug into it, I got to understand a few different things. One is, that is one of 1,000 ways to understand Christianity. That there are 1,000 more. And there's been thousands and thousands of more. And they're all happening right now. But the ones with the loudest megaphones will tell you one story. And then there's another story. Right? That's taking place. And there's different ways of reading that book. So today is Resurrection Sunday. I am culturally Christian, though not religiously Christian. But so I will, for a few minutes, have to talk with y'all about, about this story. So let's go like this. Spiritual practice individually is hugely important. Prayer, meditation, fasting, movement, all of it. It's individually transformative and healing and restorative. It is not enough. The lie we've been told in the United States is you can fix it on your own. That's a lie. You can't fix it on your own. You didn't come here on your own. If you're lucky, you won't leave here on your own. There are some people who shepherd you. My girlfriend's a midwife. And somebody shepherded you into the world. Even if it was just your mama. And who says it was just my mama? Something wrong with you. You didn't come here alone. So that lie that you can make it somehow on your own, hey, none of us do it on our own. So spiritual practice, transformative. We should pray, we should meditate, do our yoga, whatever, okay. But then this community is transformative because we can't do it on our own. We get clear, we get centered, like, oh yeah, I gotta love myself. That's right, I heard brother say that, and I'm gonna use my words. And then you go out of here and you say something, somebody look at you crazy at work, like, you maybe shouldn't have said that. You're like, yeah, I shouldn't have said that. So you need to come back here. People say, no, you should have said that. And you might have should have told them, Mo, you should look for a job too, but you might have should have told them, Mo, right? So you need that spiritual community to hold you as you do this work of transforming the world. Because capitalism, white supremacy, patriarchy is worse than a rubber band. It snaps back and will snap you back with it. So we need community to march with us to get this done. The last is, because these things are so pervasive, it is everywhere. We need spiritual teaching that stretches beyond it. Spiritual teaching that gives us something to imagine that is not limited by what we see around us. Because what we see around us right now, I'm going to tell you, is a lie. It is fundamentally a lie. It is a lie meant to sell us stuff, to buy us in, and to keep us going with something that we know is killing us. We know it's killing us. And killing the people around us. And we're like, this show is good though. Let me get someone with a hot sauce. Because it's supposed to work that way, right? The little one is like, y'all heard about like how they figured out how to make food sort of vaguely addictive? Like you put just enough of the salt and enough of the sugar to make it so that you want it, but not so much that it makes you sick. That is sick. But we buy it because it's always good, right? So we need spiritual teaching, like an actual ethical philosophy that continues to be a guiding light for when we're blown off course. His brother said, when we're blown off course. Because it's easy to get blown off course. We got all these things buffeting and pulling us, so we need those spiritual teachings. So those things are profoundly important. The last one, in my last few minutes, I'm just going to take on Resurrection Sunday, because that's hugely important. So there's a way that I want to leave you with understanding the story of Jesus Christ's death and resurrection that you might not have heard about. Some of you will, but some of you will probably not have. So the way that Jesus was executed, he's crucified on a cross by the Roman authority that was occupying his homeland. He was an occupied person, actually in Palestine, turns out, and the Roman authority executed him in a very particular way. They put him up on a cross, we're told. Now, we're also told that he was up there with two thieves. Some books say that. Well, here's what's confusing about that. The way you execute a thief is you just stone them to death. The way you execute, who you execute on a cross is somebody who's an enemy of the Roman state. Somebody who was purposely undermining the Roman government, the Holy Roman Empire. That's that person you put up on a cross. So Jesus was telling folks in his occupied homeland, his people, we don't have to live like this. We are divine children of God. When you read the Aramaic, which is the language that Jesus would have spoken, he doesn't say God the Father. No, he says God my daddy. That's the translation. So that's Father is like distant. Daddy is intimate. He was saying we are of divine origin. We should not be living like this under Roman occupation in their boot. We have to stand up and do something about it to claim our birthright. And then he goes on to say things like, you shall do greater things than I have done. Well, hold on, stop all the presses. This boy's a rebel rouser causing really big problems in our backwater province where we just over here making money and keeping these people oppressed and boot on their neck so we can get this money. And he's telling them they is somebody. Put this boy up on this cross. Let him know. So everybody see. Don't come around here with that shit. Because this is what happens to you when you do. So they put him up on a cross and left his body out there for everybody to see and know. So when his followers come back 3 days later and say, the boy ain't dead, y'all. I'm telling you, he came back. I'm telling you, I saw, I hung out with him. What they're doing is they're saying the movement's not over. He didn't die in vain. Imperialism, power, hatred, and evil doesn't have the final word. That love of one another, commitment to one another, love of ourselves, recognizing that we are all part of one thing, that thing has the final word, y'all. So, be not afraid. Now, this is the biggest army in the world is in their backyard. And they say, be not afraid, because Daddy's with us, y'all. Now, don't get caught up on, now, let me explain something, just briefly. I don't got time. But this is the thing I want to leave you with, and I want to trouble you with. The divine essence of life, that which beats in us, that which 6 to 7 billion years ago starts out with a big bang, creates stars in the sky, galaxies, and then those stars implode and create the carbon in our body. They sacrifice themselves in an act of love so that you and I could be here. Like, we are the result of a billions and billion year love affair. The universe having it with itself, trying to get to know itself in new ways. And then we show up. My daughter came home one day and told me, you know what, Daddy, we're all stardust. But trying to describe that thing itself, that first cause with words, we limit it. We got limited, silly metaphors. And so when you live in a patriarchal society, that's a small farming society, and your father is the closest thing to God you've ever seen, what do you call God?
Right.
When centuries later, the king that can decide life or death on the throne, and you're trying to say, my God is more impressive than you and all your armies, my God's a king too, damn it. Yeah, my God's a king. My God just don't got one army. My God is the host of hosts, which is like an army's a host. I'm like, God of the host of hosts. That's weird. What's an army of armies? That's weird. Because my God got more than you. So don't get caught up in the metaphors for God. They're trying to point. It's like a finger pointing you towards the moon, and then you look at the finger, and you're like, that finger hella crooked. Yes, it's hella crooked. It's a human finger, but look at the moon. All we have are words to describe things that are undescribable. They say ineffable. There's no way to describe what is. But there are moments we have experience of it, and then we try to give it voice. And so sometimes we corrupt it because we're limited. So when I say God, Daddy, don't think I mean that. I don't think God's a person. Why the hell would God be a person? You'd be a supernova. I would be a supernova. So I say all that to say, the reason I'm with you here on Easter Sunday, brought half of my family out, is because you're up to something. You have an idea, and you have a practice, you have a community, and you have commitments. That's the start. That story we know, all stories we know from our faith traditions start out with some small and irrelevant, or somebody who did something to make themselves small and irrelevant, like a king who just gave up their throne and was like, I'm going to go see what's out there. And then sat down and created a religion. So those are just stories to try to help us understand something. And they start with an idea. So you can tell a new story about how people come together. You can tell a healing story, a transformative story, a story rooted in a new truth, which is that we are all inextricably linked. And what we do to any part of it, we do to all of it. So I came here today because before I showed up, I could see you. Before I walked in here, I knew who you were. And when I walked in here, it was confirmed. When you started off, I felt it. I'm like, all right. Some people might hear I atheist and this and that, and okay, we got some African tradition. All right, I can rock. So I want you to know that I see you, I know who you are, and I thank God for you.